Welcome viewers to Graphic Talks 360. This is a production by Graphic Business and Graphic News Plus app. You can download the Graphic News Plus app on your iOS phone, Android, laptop, or desktop computers. You can find all our 6 brands on the Graphic News Plus app. That's the Daily Graphic, the Graphic Business, the Graphic Showbiz, Graphic Sports, the Mirror, and the Junior Graphic. Today, we are discussing a very important topic, nuclear power. We've heard about nuclear power since the days of Kwame Nkrumah, but we haven't seen any real action yet. Today, I have with me two experts when it comes to nuclear power. They are, to my immediate left, Dr. Stephen Yama. Dr. Stephen Yama is Executive Director of Nuclear Power Ghana. And Dr. Robert Sobadi. Dr. Sobadi is the Deputy Director, Nuclear and Alternative Energy, Ministry of Energy, and also the coordinator of the Ghana Nuclear Power Program Organization. You are welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Before I came, before I set off, somebody asked me, Charles, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to talk about nuclear power. I said, we don't have, what do you call it, food security. Why are we going to talk about nuclear energy? That means, the understanding is still not there. So please, Dr. Yama, can you walk us through what is this whole nuclear thing about?
Thank you. So, nuclear power purposely is to generate electricity for socio-economic development in the country. It's similar to the thermal powers that we all know. The only difference between the nuclear power and, for example, thermal is the heat source, how the heat is generated to generate a steam for power or for electricity. So using nuclear technology through a reaction that is sustained, a lot of heat is generated. And out of the heat that is generated, you absorb the heat through water, which turns into steam, and then you can run your turbines and your generator, and you have your power. During the days of Ghana at independence, the plan for Ghana in terms of power was basically from two sources, hydro and nuclear, and the rest were to support these two major sources.
If I may add, why do you think we need nuclear power at this time? Nuclear energy at this time?
All studies have indicated, and we have experienced this power crisis a couple of times. So it's about reliable power, it's about sustainable power to ensure that industry can have access to an affordable baseload power. So we need it to improve our industrial activities. Every government is talking about industrialization. Every government is talking about industrial growth. Most industries folded up because of power. If you have an industry that depends about 30% or more on power, then you can imagine the effect it will have on such an industry if the country can provide cheap and reliable, sustainable power to such an industry. So in order to meet our industrial targets, in order to meet the economic growth that we all aspire as a country to hit, we need that basic minimum power called baseload power. And nuclear is one form of energy that will provide you with that maximum power that is required for a country aspiring to grow industrially.
Dr. Hamwa, if you consider what happened to us with this Dunso area, government took a very bold decision to boost our energy sources.
Yeah.
Now we are being told we have excess capacity. If you have excess capacity, what do you want to bring in nuclear to do?
So if there are excess capacity, for example, why would industries will also be generating from gensets. So the issue comes back to affordability, come back to the tariff. And it's not, I mean, in the normal instance, industries will not want to worry themselves in producing power, electricity to run their industries. This is something that has to be available for the industry to tap in. But where you have a situation where the tariff and affordability becomes an issue, then that is where you have industries having to go into self-generation. So in reality, if all the industries were to tap in from the national transmission system, this excess power will not be, will not be talking about excess power. So the issue is more about tariff affordability, and that is the game changer that nuclear brings about in terms of a sustained tariff. It is such that you can plan for years, unlike the thermals that you have the fuel prices changing frequently. Nuclear, you have the fuel running for 18 months continuous. The other advantage is the fact that nuclear energy or the fuel is something that you can store for a couple of years. Okay, so when the fuel is not irradiated, it's just an ordinary metal. So you don't experience these frequent fuel changes that will have effect in terms of your tariff with respect to the power that is finally produced.
So to bring us a lot of stability.
To bring a lot of stability in terms of the tariff, to bring a lot of affordability and comfort to industry, to plan, ahead of time, because you know that within a period, you are certain about constant, reliable supply of energy at a constant tariff.
Okay, so let me bring you in here. We started talking about this nuclear thing from Nkrumah days. Where are we now in our journey?
Okay, thank you. As Dr. Yama said, we started in the Nkrumah days, and when our second, is it the third power crisis hit during the His Excellency Kufuor's administration, a committee was set up to investigate to find out if we could include nuclear into our energy mix. So when the committee gave their remarks, and nuclear was included in the energy policy, the 2010 energy policy. So in 2012, then the Ghana Nuclear Power Organization was formed to plan towards the inclusion of nuclear in our energy mix. So far, we've completed phase one, which is the preparatory phase of our nuclear journey. We've come out with our program comprehensive reports, which has been submitted to government. Um, we are, I would say, entering phase two, even though some parts of phase two have already been implemented, like the setting up of the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, the Nuclear Power Ghana Limited, which is the owner operator of the first nuclear power plant, and uh, government is also putting its efforts to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's to make sure that the nuclear program moves on smoothly and is introduced into our generation mix. I mean, without any hitches, because we are being monitored also by the international organizations since we're a newcomer country to make sure that we do the right thing. And yet, we are doing the right thing because during last review from international organization, they gave us a thumbs up. We also did well in our management systems of the nuclear program. So far, when you take the sub-region and as a newcomer country in this world, Ghana is doing very, very good, and we are on points. And we have all the government support to go nuclear.
Dr. Amwa, in terms of the phase two, what are some of the details in the phase two?
Uh, Maybe I will take us back to phase one because that is very important. So in undertaking a nuclear power program, you are building a set of infrastructures. So these are not necessarily physical infrastructures, but a number of things. It could be policy, it could be a strategy, It will be a legal regime that the country will have to put in place. So in undertaking a nuclear power program, we are talking about 19 nuclear infrastructures that has to be developed. And all these 19 infrastructures per our roadmap, which is more tied to the internationally recognized milestone approach developed by the International Atomic Energy Agency, we have divided it into 3 phases. So for each phase, you are addressing these 19 infrastructural issues. But per the phase that you are, the depth of assessment and analysis and the direction of the infrastructure, goes further and deeper. So Ghana, we really have, for the past years, have been studying all these 19 issues, and they cut across how are you going to fund the program, the project. Do we have the necessary human capital, human capacity to develop the program, the project, and even operate the plant? How are you going to tackle waste issues, safety considerations? What are the legal regime that should govern the program? What are the emergency issues, the environmental issues? Do we even going to have a site to be able to put the plant there? If we can't have a site, then obviously you can't even think about the nuclear.
These are all in the
Well,
phases.
our grade. So for each of these phases, you are assessing these issues. And as I said, depend on the phase that you are in, the depth and the direction, and then the technicalities of the studies, changes. So as you mentioned, that is what we've been doing for phase 1. And we put the report together indicating what are the status of all these infrastructural issues. How are we going to upgrade and upscale them to be able to meet the standards that is required for a nuclear organization and for a nuclear country? And that takes us to phase 2. The major milestone in phase 2 is to finally settle on a site where we'll put the power plant, and also to identify a potential vendor and technology that will eventually construct in the country.
Okay, so we'll take another short break.
Have you thought of having access to your news at any time and anywhere? Graphic Communication is giving you the opportunity to have news not only in hard copy but also in a digital form. Yes, you can have access to news at all times and even before they reach the newsstands. Simply download the Graphic News Plus from Google Play Store on your Android and App Store on your iOS device and get your digital news from your favorite daily graphic, Graphic Business, The Mirror, Graphic Showbiz, Junior Graphic, and Graphic Sports. Download your Graphic News Plus now and choose your preferred package daily, weekly, monthly, and annually, and access free news on various interest areas as well. Visit us on graphic.com.gh for further information. Graphic News Plus, connecting people through news.
Welcome back from that short break. Our next area we want to veer into is about risk. Dr. Yama, we've heard about Chernobyl. We've read about it, how people died, and in Japan, it also happened there and all. What are the risk factors around this nuclear thing?
Thank you. Yes, so we need to put the Chernobyl, the Fukushima, which happened recently in Japan, into context. What happened was an earthquake, and then there was a tsunami. What most people saw on TV were the devastation that the earthquake and the tsunami caused. Okay, the flooding, the debris and things, the ships that were, sitting on top of buildings and all those things were the consequence of the tsunami. And part of the consequence of the tsunami was the effect on the power plant. So when you are talking about nuclear risks, the major and probably the only risk is the effect of radiation. And again, we need to put the radiation also into context. It's not that any exposure to radiation will have effect on you, negative effect on you. It's more about the amount that you receive within a specified period that may have some effect on you. Now, let's take the medical industry, for example. You know, pregnancy, you go and take scan, you go and take x-ray. All these are forms of radiations. So there are useful or positive effects of radiation that are being utilized in health, in agriculture, in industry. So it's not that any exposure to radiation will have any effect on, will have negative effect on you. I mean, even there are background radiations that we are all exposed to. And mind you, let me give this example. You take somebody working in a nuclear power plant organization, having worked for, say, 5 years or 6 years, under normal operating conditions, and take somebody who travel by air for 6 hours. The amount of radiation that the person who traveled by air for 6 hours absorbed is more than the person working for about 6 years at the nuclear power plant organization at the normal operating conditions. The issue of radiation risks, of course, is real, it can happen, but there are ways to manage it. One way, we call it distance. That's why in most countries, you find the nuclear power plant not sited in a populated zone.
Dr. Yama, don't let me cut you here, but I'll come to that aspect of the discussion. But Dr. Subaji, let me take you to this issue. They said there are modern types of nuclear reactors,
Yeah.
if I'm right. Yes. From your, what do you call it, analysis, are we going to be using new technologies, or we are going to focus on the old ones that were people considered to be more risky?
Okay. The new technologies I would not say they are actually new, but they have been modernized
Modernized.
to make sure that all those um, accidents which occurred have been their mitigations have been factored in. Just like we have new cars with getting airbags and the rest. As Dr. Yama said, after the Fukushima accident, you realize that the main problem was cooling of the reactor. So modern reactor designs have taken that into if account, and certain laws have been strengthened. For example, the in Japan, the Nuclear Regulatory Authority was not separated from the operating organization. They were taking orders from the same authority. But you know, in Ghana, we have the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, we have the promoter organization, and the regulatory authority has the right to shut down your plant if you don't adhere to certain criteria which it has is advising the operating organization. But Japan had this together. So after the Fukushima, they put all things in place to make sure that these new technologies, these new plants which are coming, take into account post-Fukushima designs where they can withstand a Boeing 737 if they crash into it. We have the SMRs, which even are further safe. They are small. There are no pumps which are connected to pipes which can cause leakage. And these SMRs have also been designed very safe, and here they are supplied in modules of up to 12. That is the new scale. We have another SMR which is built on a ship, which can just be driven to your shore and then connected to your grid. So there's the APR, which is the Korean design, which has been built by the UAE. You know, UAE has a lot of gas, they have a lot of solar, but they build for nuclear power plants in a stretch. And so you ask the question, I mean, how much solar and how much gas do we have that we don't want to build a nuclear plant? Because UAE can say we have a lot of gas. So the new technologies are safe inherent. If there is an accident, they shut down on their own. If there is an earthquake beyond a certain magnitude, they shut down on their own. If there is a heating which will cause a problem, there is an overhead pool of water in the tank which will just drop by gravity and cool the whole place. So all these power plants which are in the system are safe, and they are being designed to be passive. They have passive safety interventions. Moreover, the Nuclear Regulatory Authority is also the active authority which makes sure that you adhere to all the protocols of operating a nuclear power plant. And when they come and they realize that something goes wrong, they give the direction that you shut down. Nuclear is the only energy source which is even monitored internationally. So even if the Nuclear Regulatory Authority is, let's say, compromised, the International Atomic Energy Commission will not even allow you to operate.
We have Ghana Atomic Energy Commission surrounded by encroachers and squatters, people selling land all over the place. Now, they've been squeezed into one place.
Okay.
So if we are ready now, where are we going to locate our reactors?
We need to factor cooling. And in factoring cooling, we are not looking at cooling for just the operating life of the plant. We are talking about operating life. We are looking at 60 years, sometimes 80 years and beyond. So cooling is also another important, and so therefore we are looking at what? Availability of large volumes of water for cooling the power plant. So once we consider all these, the seismicity and then the cooling factors and plus other considerations that are being used in terms of the siting, looking at the population density, looking at even the wind direction and all those things, the sea waves, assuming you are going to site the plant along the coast, how is the sea rising or not rising, issues of tsunami, even though we don't experience tsunami in the country, we are all taking all this into considerations. So you can clearly see, without me saying it, that based on these few factors of seismicity, water for cooling, population, settlement, and all of that, you can clearly see that certainly the plant is not going to be put at the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. So that is not the area. Even if there are even no water available for cooling, so certainly that is not the place that we are going to put the power plant there. But as I mentioned, it goes through stages. Okay, so having gone through phase 1 and then ushering into phase 2, we are going deeper and deeper, and hopefully in the middle of phase 2 to the end of phase 2, we should have settled on where we can put the power plant, and that will be made known to the general public.
Last week or two, there were reports that what do you call it? Reserved land for Ghana Airport, Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, is being encroached. Seriously being encroached. That tells you that once there are some major projects in a particular place, people always want to get closer. And I can cite numerous examples. And considering this very important project, how sure are you that the moment you break ground, people will not start getting closer, at least even within the a certain radius? You were talking about some things you need to keep.
This side that you say, the airport and all those things, these are lands which have been acquired for long. They have been made known to the public that we are going to build an airport in this area. So they tend to encroach and sell the land. But if this site which we are going to use for the nuclear power plant has been acquired by government, and it's being protected by the security, even if you try to encroach, you have the legal mandate and the legislation to pull down all those structures. So that site is going to be protected, because the amount of money government will spend to identify the site is too much for government to just lose it to the public. And based on the timeline that we have for the nuclear power plant to be in the grid. It is not far-fetched from, it's not too far from the period where this land will be acquired, because in phase 1, phase 2, and then in phase 3 we are constructing. So it is not that the land is going to lie fallow for 50 or 20 years and we are still waiting, and then the chiefs and people say that this land was acquired for that and it's not being used.
Today, the world is talking about environmentally friendly projects. How environmentally friendly is this?
Talking about environmental friendly technology. These days, when we talk about issues of climate change, having to deal with these greenhouse gas emissions, majority of these effects are coming from energy producing sources or energy sources. And nuclear is the only base load technology that will give you the reliable and sustainable power that you require for your industry, and at the same time ensure that you are also taking good care of the environment, because it does not contribute to this carbon emissions to the atmosphere. So most countries nowadays are using nuclear as part of their means to reducing their carbon emissions to the environment. So nuclear, in fact, the life cycle of the entire nuclear life cycle is comparable to the renewables, the hydros, the solars, the wind. Even in some instances, even better. So when you're looking at ways and means of protecting the environment, ways and means of ensuring that the environment is not polluted for future generations, nuclear, in terms of energy technologies, is probably the most, if not the only source that can sustain the world in terms of power requirement, and at the same time ensure that the environment is safe.
Most countries, yes, I'll say countries all over the world are looking for climate-friendly sources of energy to produce electricity or to drive the transport industry. And when you take the Ghana case, the first thing maybe every country will consider is that, let me build hydro, because hydro is very cheap. And but when you take Ghana, we've exhausted all our large hydros, and we are developing our mini hydros. If you put all together our mini hydros, we will not even reach up to 300 megawatts of electricity. Then we'll say, someone will say, then why don't we go solar? But you see, when we are looking at industrialization, the government agenda on one district, one factory, all comes with energy. We are building a railway network. Definitely we'll go into the great electric trains, and all is talking about energy. So where do we get this chunk of electricity from? If we do all our analysis, we said, well, you use solar. Solar, the power density is very low and the availability is very low, about 25% of the time. So you look at it and say, what are the other clean energy options? We don't want to go coal, because when we go coal, we are signatory to the Paris Agreement. So we cannot go coal. So the only options which are available to go clean and be a climate friendly source is the nuclear energy. And if you take a pellet of nuclear energy, which is, I would say, about, let's say, 1 gram of nuclear energy, it's about so many tons of coal and so many cubic feet of gas. So nuclear energy with a small amount of fuel can generate a whole lot of power. So the power density is very high and it's available more than 90% all year round. So that is, and if we are serious about industrialization and also the Ministry of Energy's vision to export clean, cheap power to the sub-region, then nuclear energy comes in mind first. I'm not saying that the renewables will not play a role. They will play a role. Solar will play a role. Wind will play a role. I mean, they are intermittent, But if you take energy, at certain points of during the day, you have the period where electricity demand is low and it's high. So those sources can feed in. But when you talk about base load, like right now, Kosombo is a base load. The power is constant throughout over um, 80% or 90% of the year Akosombo is generating. That is how nuclear power is envisaged. That it is not going to go up and down, but it's also going to add up to the base load. But it's a very cheap cost to industry, so that industry will be able to produce sustainably and be able to export, and then more industry can come in, so that the issue of other industries folding up or leaving the country or buying their own gensets will shut down, because all these gensets also add up to our greenhouse emissions, and we have nationally determined contributions which we have to meet. And if we have to meet those naturally determined commissions, we have to make sure that all these gen sets, and the Energy Commission is planning to bring in electric vehicles, which will also add up to the electricity demand. And that will mean that we need a firm base load power, and which is also clean, to be able to say that, okay, yes, we are moving according to the climate change agenda. If you take the whole of Africa, yes, our carbon footprints are not too high as compared to maybe New York and the others. Yes, we have to make sure that we keep our environment clean and we drive towards the clean climate agenda.
Okay, so we'll take another short break. When we come back, we are going to consider issues of sensitization and then the various international treaties that we've signed with other countries and international bodies. Thank you.
Have you thought of having access to your news at any time and anywhere? Graphic Communication is giving you the opportunity to have news not only in hard copy but also in a digital form. Yes, you can have access to news at all times and even before they reach the newsstands. Simply download the Graphic News Plus from Google Play Store on your Android and App Store on your iOS device and get your digital news from your favorite daily graphic, Graphic Business, The Mirror, Graphic Showbiz, Junior Graphic, and Graphic Sports. Download your Graphic News Plus now and choose your preferred package daily, weekly, monthly, and annually, and access free news on various interest areas as well. Visit us on graphic.com.gh for further information. Graphic News Plus, connecting people through news.
You're welcome back to Graphic Talk 360. Our next area we want to delve in has to do with issues of international treaties and then sensitization. But Doc, let me start with you. What kind of international legal instruments do we have as far as this nuclear project is concerned?
For a country embarking on nuclear, you are expected to adhere to a minimum of these 12, legal instruments. That has to do with safety, that has to do with security, that has to do with liability issues, that has to do with, like I said, the inspection of your activities. Now, fortunately, as a country, because of having the Atomic Energy Commission, that Ghana is already using the nuclear technology. The only area that we have not ventured in or we are not benefiting now is the power application. But other applications, we are already utilizing them. So Ghana, we have already signed on to all these 12 mandatory international legal instruments. So in that context, we are okay, and even gone beyond all the mandatory 12 and signed on to other legal instruments.
So I think from what Dr. Yama said, it put us in the right path towards getting some more visible action on the ground from what you see. Dr. Sweden, do we have any support from other countries or the International Atomic Energy Agency?
Yeah, we do have support from the International Atomic Agency, as we said earlier. They work with us step by step as a newcomer country, we make them review our documents, the advices, and they come and review our whole process. And so far, they've given us thumbs up. There are other, because of their recommendations, other countries have shown interest in our nuclear program to partner with us in terms of regulation, in terms of providing us the technology, in terms of even assisting us in the program. That means that we are doing a good thing. There is also the West Africa Nuclear Energy Group, which Ghana, Nigeria, Niger, Liberia are all part of it, all because they want to have a share in what we are doing so that they will be one of the first markets to buy our electricity because it's going to be very cheap into the West African power pool. So the international community, yes, feels very safe if Ghana is going nuclear because of our political history. We've have peaceful elections over 20 years, and we are still a beacon in the sub-region. So they feel very comfortable that Ghana will go nuclear and Ghana will adhere to all the protocols and not deviate from any international treaty that we have signed. So yes, the international community is confident with us when if for Ghana to go nuclear.
This is a project that many have some misconceptions about. Um, I was part of one sensitization program that we had with the Ghana Journalists Association, which went very well. Is it a plan, to have a broader stakeholder consultation as part of the sensitization program?
Stakeholder consultation is very key to a nuclear program. In order for everybody to have the buy-in, let's take for example Austria, who did not do a lot of stakeholder consultation before building their nuclear power plants. Then after that, said, okay, we are going to take a census on whether we should go nuclear or not, and it was negative. So they spent a lot of money, did a whole work, built their plants, and they couldn't operate. So Ghana learning from all this is making sure that everybody is aware of the nuclear program, and we say that the media is one of our key partners to be able to disseminate such information. So that is why the NPG signed the MOU with the GJA to make sure that to assure that our doors are open, and they shouldn't always rely on the propaganda media against nuclear energy, but they should always come and confirm this news with the Ministry of Energy, with Nuclear Power Ghana, with the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, to the authenticity of certain development in the nuclear industry. And our doors are really open. Sometimes we do have something we call the donut effect, which means that if the plant is supposed to be situated here, people outside are rather screaming that, oh, we don't want the nuclear program. But the people where the plant is going, based on their sensitization and awareness of the benefits of the project, support the project. So donut effect is expected, but because we don't want it to maybe be too much, we will still do the nationwide sensitization and the localized sensitization on the plant site, because the local people must also accept the buy-in in putting the plant in that region. So yes, stakeholder engagement and public sector is one of our key objectives to make sure that at least everybody in Ghana knows nuclear, the benefits of nuclear, and will have the buy-in, so that when they listen to all this media propaganda about nuclear, they will be very knowledgeable citizens and people in the country.
Before I pick your final thoughts, what is the role of the private sector in all this?
Private sector comes in so many forms. For example, industry. There is this private sector industries which play a role such as training. In our roadmap, there's a section where we have to prepare industry to also supply products, because we don't intend to import everything when it comes to the construction phase of the nuclear program. But the industry must also be trained to make sure that they meet the standards of the nuclear materials and then the gadgets or whatever we require. So we also have a program for local industry and informing them and training them. There's also the private media houses, which you also, I mean, try to engage them to make sure that they also have the buy-in. And even we even encourage other big private firms to come in as part of, let's say, partner ownership in the construction of the nuclear power plant. If they want to have maybe a 2% stake in there, a 1% stake in there, and part of the funding arrangement, it is still open that yes, they can come in and make sure that the nuclear program comes in. We have even the mining sector, which we are still open to them to also come and buy. So the private sector is also very, very, very key to this nuclear program. Even the schools, as low as the from the primary to the secondary and the tertiary, all these have been designed in the implementation of the phase one into the phase two. So in the phase two is the actionable plans where you see that okay, these are the plans we have in the phase one, and this is how we intend to execute in the phase two. And signing the MOU with the GJ is one of the key actions in the implementation of bringing in private sector and other players, because once we have the GG on our side, it's like we have most of the guardians on our side.
So phase two, in a nutshell, is more about the implementation stage, action.
The actionable, yes, plans that you've done in the phase one, then you do the actionable phase in phase two, and then phase three, you tend to do the construction.
But so normally the what do you call it? People who undertake projects will tell you from day one when the idea is conceived, the project has started. Then you put it in on paper before you start seeing the physical things. When are we going to see something physical for people to believe that yes, the talking is over?
We've been talking about a program and a project, and they are different. Okay, the program is the master activity within which you have the project. Now, a typical example is what happened in UAE and what we also refer to as the project running ahead of the program. Now, I talked about the human resource, for example, that you need to train your people ahead of time to be able to function at the time that you need them. So UAE, for example, with their first power plant, finished the construction, but had to delay the commissioning and the operation of the plant because there were no qualified operators. And to be qualified as an operator with our PhD, you don't get that in the classroom. You need to go through drill, some years of training, simulation on the plant that you are going to actually operate. So that brings about the program context. So that's why we step back and do that pre-feasibility study. So having done that, then we move into the feasibility study, which is the phase two that we've been talking about, where we begin to implement those plans and procedures that we put in during the phase one studies, and then make it an actionable activity. So that is where we are in now. It takes time because there are a number of things that you cannot rush through it. You need to go through it, the steps as been planned for. So per the plan, we looking at, that's what we keep saying, the nuclear is a long-term project. We're looking at, if we are to, everything being equal, if we are to get the required resources at the time needed, we're looking at 2030 for the, what do you call it?
Commissioning and injection.
Yeah, commission and injection of the power plant to the grid around 2030, which means we're looking at around 2025 for starting the construction or earlier. It depends on how things go. So training, as I mentioned, is a key activity. And training, you are not just training anybody, okay? You need to train the people on the technology that is going to be constructed.
Dr. Sebodi, so can you also add your final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say nuclear power was envisaged during the first president Osajifo's time. It was supposed to be built after Akosombo to guarantee the nation's industrial growth because it's a cheap power supply. And if we don't go nuclear now by our roadmap, even in the next 50 years, we'll still go nuclear. So I'll entreat everybody to um, read on the or find more information on the nuclear, get good information, and also approach our offices, the Ministry of Energy and Nuclear Power Ghana, if they have any doubts in their mind about the nuclear program. They should all give their support to the nuclear program because government have support for the nuclear program, and we envisage that it's going to be a game changer, not only to produce electricity, but there are various aspects of our economy that nuclear can bring. It can even desalinate the sea and even give clean water. It can also provide other areas in robotics, in technology, and even construction, because some countries that we invite here to come and construct our bridges, our interchanges, learn all these things during the construction phase of their nuclear power program. So as we want to empower our local industry in construction, before we ask if we finish building our nuclear plants, they will be equipped and more knowledgeable in even building some interchanges which the country will need. We will not need to go and even employ other foreign companies. So these are some industrial activities or industrial advantages that we are going to have if we continue to go ahead to build the nuclear power plants, because it's not only for power but it's also for industrial growth. And I urge everybody to support the nuclear program and not to follow other countries' propaganda, because those countries, when you go and look at their energy mix, they have coal, a lot of coal, and a lot of natural gas. They are polluting, yet they present themselves as a very clean country. They come in with so many clean technologies, but some of these technologies cannot industrialize our country. We need to export clean power and cheap power to our neighbors to be able to make more foreign exchange for our country. Our gas resource and our petroleum resource are finite resources, and based on our estimation, they may not go beyond 2045. So then, what is the next thing that is going to give us the forex that is going to sustain our industry or our economic growth? So let's think beyond the oil and gas and look at export of electricity as done by some European countries like France, because France has virtually no raw material, but they export electricity. And some European countries are doing the same thing. And the position of Ghana, if you watch the sub-region, is strategically positioned to export power both to the west, to the east, and to the north. So I entreat everybody to embrace the nuclear program and come to our office so that we can demystify all the issues about nuclear, and then to join the nuclear fraternity and also be apostles of nuclear energy. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. So all too soon, we've come to the end of this very interesting discussion program. We've been discussing Ghana's nuclear energy journey so far and the various things that have been happening around it. I hope my panelists have been able to demystify the negative perceptions that we had about nuclear power. It is going to help transform our, industrial drive and change our economy for the best. Graphic Talks 360. We've been discussing Ghana's nuclear energy plan and what has been done so far. I'm sure my panelists have been able to demystify all the negative thoughts we have about nuclear energy and therefore will have their buy-in. I've been speaking with, to my immediate left, Dr. Stephen Yamwa. Dr. Stephen Yamwa is the Executive Director of the Nuclear Power Ghana, and Dr. Robert Sogbaji is the Deputy Director, Nuclear and Alternative Energy, Ministry of Energy, and Coordinator of the Ghana Nuclear Power Program Organization. My name is Charles Benoni Okain, your regular host. See you soon.